So yeah, I can see all the number of attendees trickling in. Thank you for joining us. This is the first event in our series, Reassembling Our Cities. And this is Resilient Neighbours and Celebrating the Plants on Our Streets. And today, well, I'm Pavans de Ceccatty, you can see my little name there. I'm with PAN UK, Pesticide Action Network UK, and I'm very excited to have these incredible speakers with us. So in order of my little boxes, we have Ali McKernan, also known as the Fungi Guy. Yeah, there he goes. We have Leif Bersweden, also known, I don't know if you actually call yourself this, but the Orchid Hunter as your
I don't.
I'm calling you that now. Rasheeqa Ahmad, who's a herbalist with Hedge Herbs, that's the name. And Sophie Lequil with MoreThanWeeds, who's super active on Twitter, you might have seen. So yeah, thanks everyone for being here today. What was I going to say? Yeah, it's amazing to see all these numbers trickling in, and it's just really exciting to see sort of how many people now care about urban biodiversity and plants and learning more about it. And yeah, super exciting to have these speakers to tell us more about it. And before we start, a little bit of housekeeping or virtual housekeeping. What was I going to say? Yeah, we have, if you look at the bottom, we should have a live transcript available, which I will now make possible. There we go. So if you want to, you can actually click and have your subtitles there, just to be more accessible. And then also we have a Q&A option. So at the end of the talk, hopefully we'll have time for questions. So if you have any questions, do pop them into the Q&A and then we can get to them either in the event or definitely after. But at some point, your questions will be answered, hopefully by the speakers. So yeah, that's mainly everything. If you drop out, you should have your own link to be able to come out, to come back onto the event. So yeah, here we go. I thought I would first tell you a little bit more about Pesticide Action Network UK, just because, yeah, we're the guys putting this on. So we're the only charity in the UK that are actually focused on tackling the problems caused by pesticides. And most of you will probably think of pesticides as to do with agriculture, but there's actually over 38 pesticides used in cities and in urban spaces to date. So it's very much an urban issue as well. And by pesticides, we mean, that's actually quite an umbrella term. And by that, we mean herbicides, insecticides, fungicides, and rodenticides. So anything that's a pest, anything that's a weed and an insect basically has a different pesticide that can come and kill it. And so councils and land managers will be spraying these chemicals in our parks, in our playgrounds, in road verges, in tree pits, on pavements, where else? Cemeteries and council estates, and basically lots of other spaces that councils manage. And effectively anywhere that you see that isn't green has been sprayed in a way, anywhere that's bare. And actually right now they'll be spraying. So anywhere that you see that has a yellowing strip or an edge of a park or a path that's really, really neat and has sort of dead plants, that will most likely be sprayed by pesticides. So it is hard to know when it's happening, but right now it's quite a good time to be able to identify it. And so something to know is that these pesticides are actually sprayed for 99% cosmetic reasons, so just to keep our cities neat and tidy. But of course, that's an opinion. And there's no real reason for it. And this actually leads to exposure for humans and potential harmful effects for human health, particularly for kids and pregnant people. And then for our pets' health as well, they get their paws burnt there, and as well for biodiversity. So obviously we all heard about the devastating effects on insects and just, in general, seeing our green cities. Sorry, this is the downer part. But yeah, so a lot of these bare spaces and what we call green deserts of just having lawns with absolutely nothing else on it, and these really sterile spaces. So basically, yeah, the campaign I lead on, Pesticide-Free Towns campaign, is all about showing that there are alternatives to these pesticides and it's completely unnecessary to be using them. And actually, it's not just about alternatives, it's also about changing mindsets. So yeah, we can actually encourage our cities to be greener, to be wilder. And that's what this series is all about. So yeah, we're all about thinking of celebrating this biodiversity and celebrating all these projects that are going on. So Leif, Rasheeqa, Ali and Sophie are all doing these incredible educational projects, and all of this really is undermined by these councils and land managers that continue to use pesticides. So in a way, this campaign is all about going pesticide-free as the first step, and then being able to really celebrate and value this urban biodiversity. And so today, thank you, a bit of the end of my long spiel. Today is all about really celebrating these plants and these mushrooms, and really, yeah, giving a platform to what we could see, what you can see already, but what we could see even more of if we stop spraying and if we really change our mindsets, and encourage councils and encourage land managers to have more of these in our environments. Whew. Thanks, everyone. So first up, we have Sophie. I'm going to introduce you a little bit. So Sophie is a freelance botanist, a writer, and a nature tour leader who's become interested in urban biodiversity since living in London. And in 2019, she started the MoreThanWeeds project to change people's perceptions of urban plants, for councils to consider alternatives and for greener cities. So Sophie, tell us a little bit more about the plants that you've encountered and yeah, and your project, really.
Thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen. I don't have that much text. I've got a couple of pictures, so I hope you'll enjoy them.
Great.
I cannot share my screen, please.
Yes.
Sorry.
Here you go.
Thank you. Here we go. Well, thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you so much for organizing such an event. So some of you may have heard about the MoreThanWeeds project, which I started in 2019 and which really took off last year. So just to give you, in just a few words, because I have limited time, I basically come from France, where pesticides in streets have been banned. And when I came back, when I moved to the UK, when I came back to the UK, I thought, this absolutely needs to happen here, because we talk all the time, councils themselves talk all the time about, biodiversity loss in our cities. And actually, this is happening in our streets all the time. So I'm really pleased to see an event actually focusing on the plants, that live around us. We always think about cities as being deserts, but they're not. They could be green and much greener than what they are. So when Emma said, can you possibly highlight a few plants, your favorite plants? Well, this is really difficult. I recently did a bit of research because I was wondering, how many plants actually live in our cities. It's a good question. We don't know somehow how many plants. And actually, in a city like London, there are possibly 2,000 different pavement plants, possible pavement plants, which I think is absolutely, extraordinary. It's small plants that you may see in the countryside. And I think that's absolutely needs to be celebrated. So I've chosen a few. The first one I've chosen is the humble dandelion. So I've actually chosen the dandelion as the logo of the project, because it's a plant that's very close to my heart. It's obviously one of those plants that is seen as a weed. People kill it in lawn. There are actually dandelion weed killer that are used, commercially and by amateur gardeners, which I think is absolutely a shame, because the dandelion is one of the best plants for pollinators. So by killing it, we actually remove, a massive food resource, especially because it flowers in winter, when there isn't much else around. And it's also a really good edible plant for, for all of us. You can eat the flowers, you can eat the leaves. So I think it's a really good all-rounder, and we need to kind of, celebrate it. My second plant is the nettle, but you may notice something different about that particular nettle. It's not the large nettle that you'll find, in parks or in your garden. This is a small nettle, which is actually more common on pavement. So this is called the small nettle or the burning nettle. And nettles, again, something we don't realize, that we find them annoying. They sting. They grow everywhere in gardens. But actually, the nettle is one of the best plants for butterflies. So in the UK, there is an estimate that, over 40 different insect species absolutely need the nettles, not for as pollinators. You know, nettle doesn't have those pretty big flowers, but they need it for their larvae. So the caterpillars absolutely need the nettle to be able to grow and produce beautiful butterflies. So by removing, you know, those nettles, it may seem as, you know, nothing special, but actually, you know, we may see fewer butterflies when we do that. And my final favorite plant is the chickweed. Again, something you'll find in garden, but also quite frequently on pavements. And the name chickweed actually refers to the fact that birds love it. So they eat the leaves, they eat the little flower, very, very small white flowers, and they also eat the seeds, which are very nutritious. And even us, you know, this is a plant, I'm sure some of the other speakers may mention it, but this is a really good nutritious plant. So again, something, you know, to look forward to and to celebrate. So Emma said, well, can you talk as well about non-favorite plants? And I thought that was potentially quite interesting to mention. And there may be campaigners, you know, among the audience tonight. And often, you know, one of the arguments of councils is, yes, but some of those pavement plants are actually invasives. And this is partly true. There are a few, you know, invasive plants on our pavement, but very, very few. So it's actually not the best argument. One of those is the tree of heaven, which is, you know, quite a large tree, and the seedlings can, you know, grow on pavements. They can disturb the pavement. The roots can actually lift the pavements as well. So potentially, you know, that could be a plant. By removing specifically that particular plant, we could avoid, you know, a lot of damage and a lot of problems in the future. And coming to my next point, which is about the future, you know, would those plants that grow on our pavement could then become invasive? Again, this is an argument being used. You know, if we don't weed kill all those plants, they will spread around, they will become invasive, you know, we won't be able to control them. And actually, you know, is that a really good argument? So I've chosen two plants here. One of them, you may have seen it, particularly if you live in the southern half of the UK, and it's called Mexican fleabane. So it was introduced in gardens. And it's a really beautiful, you know, beautiful plant that, you know, resists drought and all of that. It seems to be spreading, but is it really going to cause a problem? Or is it just, you know, making more and giving more resources to our insects and our birds? And the next one is again, not the showiest plant, but that's a grass. It has been spreading, so it comes from Mediterranean areas and it's been spreading, but it's not causing any problem at all. You know, it's being used by our insects, and it's a good addition to our nature and to our biodiversity. So I think, you know, I'm coming to that point about, you know, damage and are those plants, should we be killing all those plants? And I think many of the arguments, you know, that are being used are actually, you know, not relevant or have very, very little relevance. So I've been doing a bit of, you know, research as part of the project to look at this. And, you know, it's the same with plants on walls, for example. So this is yellow corydallis, which is a very pretty plant from alpine regions, and it likes growing on, you know, walls and cracks. And, you know, that plant has got such thin roots that it's not going to cause any damage or very limited damage. And a lot of the time, plants in pavements are growing in little cracks as well, you know, where nothing, you know, there would be nothing else kind of growing there. So they're really not a problem. And I think, you know, I'm sure the other speakers will continue on what I've started. But I would really like, you know, those plants to be seen as more than problems. Some of them can be a problem, so it's important, you know, to point it out. But the vast majority of them are not. And I think by, you know, systematically killing them, we are actually depriving ourselves on a huge resource and a huge biodiversity. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sophie. That's amazing.
There you go.
So beautiful to see also all your own pictures of, yeah, you going out and actually seeing all these plants in situ. That's really, yeah, exciting to see. And interesting to hear as well, sort of the nuance of it, right? Like that it's not just all welcome or easy to deal with, that there are some that need to be dealt with or need to be considered, and yeah, sort of considering it. So yeah, very interesting. Thank you. Next we have Ali McKernan, so the fungi guy, the one with the fungi behind him. So I would say that you are a mushroom enthusiast and educator, creating fantastic videos on YouTube and on Instagram. And Ali also supports the British Mycological Society, teaches children at school about mushrooms, and also leads identification walks. But yeah, I got to know him through his incredible videos on Instagram and really recommend it. So full of, yeah, bubbly energy. So yeah, tell us about mushrooms that we can find in urban spaces.
Sure. Thanks very much. Thank you for that. Sophie, that was amazing and really detailed, wonderful, informative talk. And I've gone for an angle of celebrating what we've got as much as anything, because I'm really passionate about fungi, the same reason we're all here today. Fungi are super important. They're crucial to our existence. They underpin life. They support all that is green, over 80% of it. And it's kind of a hidden thing, in many ways, a hidden network, literally. And people are becoming more and more aware of that. And that's dead exciting, because all we might see from day to day or here and there or walk in the woods is this occasional fruit body, which might be a mushroom or a puffball or whatever it is, an earth tongue. But actually, and they pop up, at certain points of the year. But all the year round, they are working and have been working for thousands upon thousands of years, working underground, out of sight, doing an incredible job of supporting our ecosystem. And that is just, I think, so terribly exciting and really important to know for us all. And so, yeah, but the bit that's exciting often for us and accessible, this is a big part that I would like to talk about tonight. It's just how accessible fungi can be. Is the fact that they are on our streets. They don't discriminate. And maybe I can mention that a little bit more later. But let's celebrate some of the fungi that we can find on our streets, because I just find it, look, it's brilliant. It can be a walk to the post office. It can be a commute on a bike or a car, side of the eye, please drive responsibly. And suddenly your day is made. It is for me anyway, because I'm a dweeb and I'm absolutely obsessed with fungi. But it just, that little, hey, look at that. The same way you guys might feel about finding a certain moss or a lichen or an orchid, whatever it might be, or a certain flower. It's like, look at that. Look at you here. I wouldn't expect that. And there are fungi all around us. Very quickly, just to explain, they have three basic roles in nature. So you've got the friend, the enemy. The friend, yeah, let's have the enemy. No, I shouldn't call it that. That's not fair. The friend, the recycler, and the killer. That's the three roles, loosely speaking. The friend are these ones that support living networks, mycorrhizal relationships that underpin lots of life with plants, trees, and grasses. And then you've got the recyclers, massive one that people might never have thought about before, but they are responsible for degrading all organic matter. So whether it's a beautiful ancient beech tree that's run its course, hundreds of years old, and it's come over, that needs rotting down. Or whether it's a bird's feather, a sheep's skull, a cat poo, there's a fungus for it and it's out there doing its job, because all organic matter has to be turned back into soil, essentially. So they are the soil magicians, which is somebody else's phrase, but it's a good one. And last of all, you've got the killer, which is the parasite. And we can all imagine what that role is. But again, all part of the whole ecosystem. So let's get to the accessible ones, because you don't need to live near some ancient woodland, albeit that's a beautiful thing. That little walk to work, urban fungi, or whether you are in the countryside, there will be fungi near you at some point or all points around the year. Right place, right time, you'll see them. And if you get your peepers peeled, if you start to turn on that fungal radar, it just the gift that keeps on giving. So here's a rubbish photo to start off. My home screen there is not half of what Sophie's was, but that epitomizes it all for me. I'll do my three best in a moment. But if you can see there, it looks rubbish. It's just a bit of a scratchy picture, but those two fungi are beautiful and amazing. And I found them on the leisure centre car park when I took the children on their weekly swimming trip each week. That week itself, I had just taught over 100 children in our year 4, I work in a primary school, all about fungi for UK Fungus Day. And as it happens, I taught them 4 big trees, the 4 main ones that fungi grow with as a friendship, this mycorrhizal symbiosis thing. And I said, hey, look out the window at the buses. I said, there's 3 of the trees that we talked about, birch, beech, and pine. And I said, I'm going to have to look down there. So we all piled off the bus. And sure enough, there were fungi growing, right time of year. And sure enough, I had to do a bit of research, because that little white one there is actually a bearded milkcap, which is quite unusual. It's called a milkcap because it exudes milk. Sorry, I didn't plan to talk about these, but I've got carried away so quickly. And then I found out the research showed they actually grow with young birch, which is exactly what it was. So I learned a little. Next minute, I've got all the kids lined up and I'm showing them what goes on.
Bit of a frozen screen there. Oh no. Zoom couldn't keep up with Ali. We might give him a second or come back to him. Not sure we do that. In which case we will go to Leif and then come back to Ellie. Oh, I was getting into that, but
I'm back.
Did I go away?
Back. Did I go away for a minute?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, you missed everything. I've finished. Joking. Okay, let's carry on. So next slide, please, then, Emma. Let's have a look.
Awesome.
Emma. I don't know what you guys can see. I never have issues. I've got a pretty good internet connection, but you frozen. There it is. I think we're back in. Sorry, guys, you were freezing. I'll continue. Let's go for it. It's telling me I'm unstable. I do apologize. Okay, hold those photos there. This is the shaggy ink cap. I've done this because it epitomizes urban fungi. I actually find this in streets and parks and roadside verges more than I do ever out in the countryside on a beautiful, fungal foray walk. These guys just pop up at the sides of the roads. They're quite transient. You never know quite sure where they're going to be. They can be on a particular street corner. Same time next year, nothing. And it's the way that they spread the spores that's part of it. So I'm using common names, guys, because I find picture, and it's also got the name the lawyer's wig, that beautiful, curly white bouffant wig thing going on. But these guys, sometimes you can find them like this beautiful like stream, this little river of gorgeous little families of white fungi popping up, and sometimes you get these massive specimens, these chonkers on their own. But there's a few things that are fascinating. It is called the ink cap because it will deliquesce, which means it auto-digests, it eats itself and turns into this gloopy inky substance. That ink can be used to draw and paint with. In the old days, monks used it to write their scriptures, apparently. If anyone's familiar with Merlin Sheldrake and his beautiful book about fungi recently, every single illustration is done with the ink from an ink cap. So that's an amazing thing. Great little practical thing to do at home with the kiddies. Or if you're an adult, let's not discriminate, have some fun with an ink cap. It stinks. You might want to put some cloves, a bit of alcohol with it. That can help. So the ink cap, if you look in the second picture, if you press the next slide for me, Emma, circled how at the very bottom of the gill, you can see that it's starting to go black. That's where it turns. These are actually an edible fungus. And the only reason they're not really, or one of the only reasons, is that they're not sold on supermarket shelves is you can't get them from the grass to the shelf fast enough before they're gone. 24 hours and these guys have eaten themselves up. So it's this beautiful flit of a moment that you've seen. If you get pristine one, it's lovely. Emma, are you able to slide on another? Let's have a little look. Oh, just go back one for me. I can't remember what my third picture was. I think there's another one. Oh, we're all over. There we go. So anyway, this deliquescing thing, it's a beautiful, there we go. That's just a highlight of my own pictures in there. Oh, okay, yeah, I like using them as microphones. They just lend themselves very well. Certain fungi do that. And I like to tell a good dad joke into that microphone. It's got that whole physique about it, hasn't it? So yeah, the shaggy ink cap coming. The spores on this, I must mention this before we move on. The spores of this are in the actual ink. So if you think of a typical mushroom with gills that you might get, for instance, in a supermarket, when they're in the wild, the spores, the seeds drop out and blow off in the wind. The spores, the seed dispersal for this guy is in the ink, and then we'll step in it and tread those spores away, and that's how it spreads its spores. Pretty cool. Okay, let's go to fungus number 2. And these are the boletes. I was going to pin down one, but you know what? They're all
Yeah, we're having difficulties again, Ali. Sorry, everyone. Give him another second.
Hi guys.
Is there any way
Can
to
you
get
hear me?
another connection and then maybe we can go to Leif and come
I'm
back
very
to you?
sorry if you lost me.
Yeah.
Okay to carry on?
Yeah, go for it. Try it.
I do apologise. My internet's normally very good. It's never happened before. Let's go for boletes and I'll try and do it in a nutshell. Look at these guys. These are big chonkers that if you view them, like I said, on roadside verges, this one on the left there is just on a local subway grass verge. And they're fascinating for lots of reasons. One, it's just nice to find massive mushrooms and go, wow, look at them. The boletes have a different underside. If you generally, or just learn about mushrooms, you think they all might have those gills, those flaps of tissue that radiate out. This has like a sponge and they can be solid and chunky. Sometimes they're a bit squishy to the touch. But what you know with nearly every single bolete in the world is they are mycorrhizal. That bolete there, in fact, all those three in my hands there, have to be growing with a nearby tree. They wouldn't exist without the nearby tree. So you look for the host tree. What's happening now? Someone learning about the trees in my environment. And it's this thing, these walks, these commutes, these parts of understanding our neighborhoods, which is why it's so important, because we know about the importance of connections in our environments. And if you're connecting with your immediate environment, you don't have to go off somewhere. If you can enjoy your spaces because you've learned about the trees and the mushrooms that grow there, it's just a beautiful thing. So that one on the left is the brown birch bolete. There has to be a birch tree nearby for that to exist. And sure enough, if you look in the distance, for those who know their wobbly, blurred tree silhouettes very well, you'll know that that's one there. There's your birch. And these other ones was amazing. I chose to do a detour on the way home. I thought, you know what, I'll go a different route. It's a bit of a scratchy route, streetwise, but you know what? These two came up trumps. I'll do the one on the right first because it looks less glamorous, but it's amazing. It's our deepest staining blue mushroom in the country, and it was growing on the lawn of the dentist in the city centre. And I'm like, wow! And it's growing with the beech tree up above because I knew, again, what must it be growing with? So, and then the one on the left, in the middle there, that massive one, is the porcini, one of the finest edible mushrooms in the world. I found that on the same journey as I walked home, as I walked their lawns. And I'm like, I can't ignore that. What an incredible thing. And it just lifted, what an evening I had to find such things. The boletes are accessible. You can work out what they are. Some mushrooms, it's just impossible without microscopy, but they're dead accessible because when you cut them, you look at the way they stain. Do they turn red at the
Sorry, another little intermission. We might have to wrap it up. Oh. Sorry, Ali. Should we go to the last one very quickly?
Yeah, I'll finish. I'll make it quick.
Sorry.
Okay. The last one are earth stars. It's a cheeky one, this, because they're not that common, but all the more reason to put them in here because you can find them. They can be an urban fungus. I find these every now and then at the sides of roads. These don't grow mycorrhizally. They don't have a symbiosis with a host tree. But every now, I mean, just look at what these are. These are incredible fungus. So not mushroom shaped, of course. This is ball shaped. It's in this sphere that keeps all its spores. And it has a mechanism where twigs, rainfall, I'm going to use a fox's foot. I don't know why always a fox, but something stands on it, and it puffs out all the spores out that little hole at the top there. But it starts like an onion, it peels open and ends up like this with these beautiful rays. An earth star is just a delight to find. And one example, my son was in hospital and I went for a little walk in the car park while I was waiting. He was having a scan. I don't remember what it was for. I don't remember what my son was in hospital for, but I do remember that I found earth stars in the car park. And it was under a street lamp late at night. And I was just walking around thinking, might as well have a mooch. What can I find? Earth stars. They are accessible and they're out there, people. So there we go. A few fungi for you. I'm sorry for the technical hiccups, but there we go. 3 of my favorites that you might find out and about.
That's amazing. Makes me want to go out and try and see them, try and walk on an earth star. And
you've got to, if you find one, poke it. You have to poke an earth star. I think there's a rule, a law somewhere written. Prod it.
I will. Okay. Thank you. And yeah, we'll also get more time to ask you more questions about it all. And hopefully it'll be a bit more stable then.
Sure.
And now Leif. So a little intro to you, Leif. So Leif is a writer, a botanist, and a science communicator with a lifelong love for nature and opening people's eyes to the wonderful world of plants. He's the author of the incredible book, The Orchid Hunter, which was published in 2017. And I think there's more coming soon. And he leads plant ID courses with the Species Recovery Trust. So yeah, incredible to have him here today. And yeah, tell us about the plants that you love, Leif.
Of course. Would you like me to share my screen, or are you going to?
I will make you co-host. It's easier.
1 second. Has this worked?
Yes.
Yes, brilliant. Okay, it didn't work the last time I did this, so that's good news. Hi everyone, my name is Leif. I am a botanist and a science communicator, and I basically spend my entire life trying to persuade people that plants are awesome and everyone should go look at them all the time. This evening I was talking to you about three, it seems to be a theme. I've got three of my favorites. I've got the mosses, which most people will ignore, but I'm going to show you just how incredible they are. And they actually provide a load of services for us, like cleaning our air. Then we've got these parasitic broom rapes in the middle, which absolutely love a beer garden, almost as much as I do. And then on the right here, we've got a bee orchid, which is just one of the best things ever. And yeah, that actually loves growing in urban environments. And I found that outside Burger King the other day. So I'm going to start with mosses. These are just the sweetest little plants. You know, most people, you hear the word moss and you'll think, oh, little boring green thing that grows on walls and, you know, damages them, but actually they're just incredible. When you look up close, they're also different. There are so many different forms, shapes and patterns, and they're actually really, well, the really common ones are actually really easy to distinguish when you start looking at them. Now, mosses are really, really old. They have existed for about 2,000 times the length of time that humans have been around. They're sort of more than 400 million years old as a group. And they love water, they love damp environments. And so during the autumn and the winter, when we have the more rain, they really, really come into their own. So they're actually a brilliant way to connect with nature if you're not looking at the fungi during autumn and winter, when a lot of nature does seem to go to sleep. They grow pretty much everywhere in urban environments, walls, pavements, buildings. They'll grow on trees, in tree pits, along rivers, everywhere you can possibly imagine. You'll find some mosses. You get really, really little sort of cushion forming ones. You get ones which look like great big ferns. And like there are just so many different textures and things. And I would love to tell you all about each one, but I sadly don't have time. The four here, though, are four of my favorites. You know, top left there, capillary thread moss. We've got these little these structures are called sporophytes. They're the reproductive structures of the moss, and they kind of look like little red and green snowdrops with that red stalk and then the nodding green head. Top right, wall screw moss. Again, very similar with those sporophytes, but instead of nodding green at the top, they sort of stick up and they look like little green or red chilies. And then at the bottom, again, springy turf moss and silky wool feather moss are just two really, really common species that grow everywhere on walls and in little patches of grass. But when you look at them closely, they are just stunning. Now, mosses are really, really important for our urban environments, not only because they capture carbon through photosynthesis, but also because they actually clean our air. So they take in pollutants from the air that come from car exhausts and things, nitrogen oxide and ozone and compounds like that. And they just take that out of the air, they filter it out, they use it to grow and make the air a little bit cleaner for us. So actually those roads where you've got a load of moss on the walls, the air will be cleaner than where you don't. If you do want to find out more about mosses, then I did this thing on social media called Couch to 10 Mosses earlier this year, January, February time. And basically, I spent 10 weeks trying to teach people the 10 commonest mosses which you can find, many of which are in towns and cities, on walls and things. So if you want to find out more, then yeah, go and have a look at that that hashtag. And there are a load of like really, really basic, simple ways to tell one from another. So that's the mosses. Next up, we have broom rapes, which are these really, really bizarre plants. They're parasites, and so they don't photosynthesize. They don't produce any chlorophyll, which is the green stuff you get in plants. And so they look like these slightly dead orchid-like things, but actually they're completely alive. And when you zoom in, you see that they're not dead. They're actually just like other flowers, just brown. So what they do is they basically have this little root-like thing which sort of taps into the roots of its host plant and extracts nutrients. It extracts water, sugars, which the host plant has made through photosynthesis, and it just basically siphons everything off that it needs. Not too much that it kills the host plant, but enough to keep it alive. And so it's this really weird kind of like thief which just steals a load of stuff. But it takes the how to be a plant rule book and just chucks it out the window and doesn't produce any chlorophyll. Now, these can be found throughout towns and cities. The one on the right here, common broom rape, is a relatively easy one to find because it parasitizes plants in the pea family, so like clovers and vetches, which are relatively common. But some of them, like this ivy broom rape in the middle here, are much more specific. So this one will specifically parasitize ivy plants, and so you'll find it in this sort of carpet of ivy. Churchyards are often very good places to look because they're sort of undisturbed environments generally. A shady corner of a park might have a patch of ivy with a load of these ivy broom rapes coming up, or best of all, the beer gardens, where I always look out when I'm sitting on those picnic benches. I will always have a little scan around for broom rapes because they just love growing in those little corners. And there's nothing better than telling all your mates over a beer all about broom rapes. So that's really cool plants. And the final one is just one which constantly just blows my mind. It's just the most incredible thing. It looks stunning and kind of looks like a plant which would never ever grow in a city. It would always grow in really lovely places in the middle of the countryside. But actually this one loves a good urban place. They are insect mimicking orchids. So as you can probably see, these flowers kind of look like little bees. Now, this species and its close relatives have evolved to exploit the sexual desire of male bees in order to get pollinated. So what they do is to a male bee, the flower of a bee orchid looks, smells, and feels like a virgin female of its species. But what happens in the spring is that the males emerge slightly earlier than the females. So there's this period of time where there are males flying around, but no females. And this group of orchids has evolved to time their flowering periods to coincide with that period of time where there are male bees around, but no females. So our male bee is flying around. He's looking for a female to mate with. There aren't any. But he comes across a bee orchid and he sees what he perceives to be a female resting on the flower with her head buried amongst the petals. And he thinks, great, this is my lucky day, I've scored. And he flies down and he lands on the flower, and still completely convinced that this is a female, he attempts to mate with the flower, which in itself is just completely insane. But while the bee is having a great time, the orchid sort of lowers these two sacs of pollen, which it's sort of glues to the back of the bee's neck. The bee is completely oblivious to this, has absolutely no idea what's going on. He's on cloud 9, having a wonderful time. But after a while, the bee starts to get a bit frustrated by the lack of action, and he buzzes off in search of a more enthusiastic partner. So he's flying around again, trying to find a female. Still aren't any around. And he comes across a new bee orchid. And in attempting to mate with these flowers, he deposits the pollen on the female reproductive surface and pollinates the orchids. So it's this incredible system. It's so ingenious. And what I love most about it is that this entire fraud is masterminded by a plant. It's always great when the plants get one over on the animals. Having said all of that and told that entire story, the bee orchid, while it's evolved this mechanism, has actually stopped. It's abandoned this way of getting pollinated. It's basically the specific insect which pollinated this plant, which evolved with it, has either died out or perhaps moved on to a different orchid species. We don't really know. But the bee orchid has had to make this drastic lifestyle change in order to survive, basically. And so it now pollinates itself. It just completely skips the pollinator stage and just pollinates itself. But this is a great one in urban environments. You can see on the photo on the left here, that's Tesco in the background. So they'll grow along road verges and roundabouts, often where new roads and roundabouts go in. That disturbance in the soil disturbs the seed bank and throws up a load of bee orchids. Industrial estates are great places for them. Retail parks, and as I mentioned at the beginning, this one I found recently outside Burger King, and the people in that car couldn't decide whether to look at the person giving them their food or the really, really cool guy crouched down on the floor looking at the bee orchid. But it's really, really cool just to see them in these really weird places where you would never expect to see orchids, this sort of plant which is surrounded with this aura of rarity and mystery. So there we have my 3 plants: urban mosses cleaning the air, parasitic broom rapes in the beer gardens, and Burger King bee orchids. And I will hand back to Emma.
That's incredible. So I don't think I've ever seen a bee orchid, but if I do, I'm definitely going to look at it in a very different way than I would have before. And now I have an excuse to go to the beer garden as well.
Yeah.
Oh, that's incredible. Thank you. Moving on just swiftly, because I'm conscious of time. We have Rasheeqa Ahmad. Thank you for being here. And so she's bringing a slightly different angle. We've kind of heard about plants from this angle of, I guess, like entertainment in a way, and sort of curiosity and all these different anecdotes and incredible stories, and also what they can do for other species and how they interact with other species. But there's also just how they interact with humans and what they can do for humans. So I'll introduce Rasheeqa. So Rasheeqa is a herbalist actually in Walthamstow, so not far from me in London, practicing since 2012 and connecting communities with the potential of this herbalist knowledge and craft as a way to develop healthier living systems and relationships. And she's part of the Community Apothecary CIC and is involved with the Mobile Apothecary Project, which maybe we'll hear more about in a bit. But yeah, really incredible projects that we'll link to. Yeah, and so tell us more about plants that you engage with.
Well, thank you, Emma, and thanks all of you. That was really wondrous to hear these passions from these different angles. So yeah, I'm Rasheeqa. I practice as a herbalist, so I'm coming at towards the plants from the angle of how can we connect with them to support our health and use them as medicine at all different levels. I'll just share my screen now, if that's all right. Is that happening?
Yeah.
1 second. So yeah, I'm going to echo a little bit. Yeah, as Sophie said, the richness of the cities, and it was brilliant to hear Ali's excitement about the daily walk, because it is really like that, and the COVID whole situation, because I do lots of herb walks, bringing people out to wild spaces in the city to meet the different plants that grow through the seasons, but having to kind of shift the gaze more close to the city streets has been really revelatory as well, kind of seeing what's really close to you around in the pavement. And it's also very seasonal for me. So I'm just going to kind of go through a few slides. I'm going to talk about 3 plants that I really love as I come to them. The 3 that I want to focus on a bit more of the hawthorn and the yarrow, and then one called Herb Robert. But I'm just, yeah, when Emma invited me and said, can you talk about 3 different plants? And then I was like, oh my God, there's all these different ones that you see really closely around those and abundantly in the city. So yeah, Sophie already mentioned the chickweed as being a great edible plant, and we use it medicinally. It's this real juicy, moist, lovely thing that you can eat. It's very nutritious, but we also infuse it into oil to make a cooling skin preparation. You can make a cream with it or a balm for hot, irritated skin. And it's one that just grows such a lot in planters around the streets and the pavements. Just a couple here of other springtime ones, the plantago or ribwort plantain, that is a really common weed, but again, nutritious and a great healing agent. We use it a lot medicinally, internally in the body as an anti-inflammatory, but also externally on the skin. For traditionally, it's used for healing insect bites and stings. And the one on the left there is this amazing kind of little alleyway not far from where I live that in April time is just full, really replete with three-corner leek. That's one of the wild garlic species that's so delicious. So yeah, it's this joy of kind of wandering the streets close to where you live and going, oh, there's this thing at certain times of the year, and it really connects you with the cycle and the energies through the seasons. The violets are another one that I love a lot in the early springtime with these. Some of them have these aromatic, sweet smelling flowers that you can eat, but also we use them a lot as a respiratory system medicine for coughs and for congestion, and particularly also for kind of lymphatic swellings in that sort of winter to spring moment of the year. And that's something I tend to see a lot in churchyards and around railings and yeah, different parts of the city where I live. Couple of other juicy springtime leaves that I'm sure a lot of you know and probably pick in the spring, the garlic mustard or jack by the hedge, which tends to grow a lot on the sides of paths. In wooded areas, it likes sort of shady spots. And then the linden flowers, which are out at the moment, and these are the leaves, but earlier in the year, which are very juicy and what we call mucilaginous, the kind of gloopy texture to them. And they make a really brilliant salad base, like an edible leaf earlier in the year. Bit of wild rose and some elderflower there, which are other really common city edible and medicinal plants that we have. But this is one of the ones that I want to speak about as being one of my favorites the last few years. I don't know if anyone knows or connects with Herb Robert particularly, but it's quite, yeah, it's got lots of names that pertain to its smell, because if you rub it, it's quite sort of musky smelling. But it's interesting because it's such a kind of abundant weed that proliferates in a lot of places, loves to grow on the edges of pavements and growing through fences. And it is, like Sophie said about the corydalis, that has the thin, delicate roots. You can pull it up very easily, but it's very interesting, a really interesting history in Europe, as being used traditionally as a cancer remedy. And that's partly seems to be attributed to the fact that it's very rich in a trace element, a mineral called germanium, which is used in our bodies, is utilized in our bodies to help blood carry oxygen around. So it's being investigated in different ways for its potential, its value as an antioxidant herb. But it's just a really fresh, amazing smelling plant and good to eat and to brew a tea with, something that I always kind of, in teaching people about medicinal herbs of the street, something that you could recommend to take on a regular basis as a tea for good health. Just a couple more of things that have delighted me this year with wild mustard, yeah, mustard greens growing in a sort of unkempt corner spot, and the poppies feel like they've been really amazing this year. These are the lime flowers of the linden that I've just been picking some today. They're out at the moment. They're really common in city streets, enormous, elegant trees. And they make a beautiful sweet tea that is very relaxing. It kind of relaxes into the nerves and can help you to sleep. And then, yeah, another one of my favorites here that it's a favorite of a lot of herbalists, is the yarrow, the one on the left with the white flowers that you'll see on kind of verges and the grassed areas that are not supposed to be, where you're not supposed to play ball games and all that kind of thing. If you look in the early part of the year, the little yarrow leaves will be coming there, but as it constantly gets mowed by the council, they're not allowed to grow in a lot of places. But in gardens that I've been making in Walthamstow, we've just let them grow, and it's just an amazing, sturdy, beautiful aromatic plant. We use it a lot in medicine. It has an incredible range of uses, being bitter and helping digestion, and being anti-infective, antimicrobial, being sort of antispasmodic and relaxing in the body. We use it for, lots and lots of different things, really special valued plant, but that's a very common urban one. As is the common mallow, that's the picture on the right there, which is a very soothing one that you could brew up into tea for sore throats. And then, the third plant that I have to say I really love, and having grown up in Yorkshire, where, I was close to the hills and you see it a lot growing there, it's just as common around the city, and it grows in various different ways, being a shrub or a hedge, and it's got really interesting history in the sense of being traditionally used as hedging between agricultural fields, and really important in the ecosystem as a shelter and of providing food for apparently more than 300 insects, loads of moths, caterpillar food for moths, nectar for bees, shelter for lots of little mammals and birds. So it's an incredible tree, and then the medicine we bring from it connects with the heart and the cardiovascular system. So we use the flowers in the spring, the white flowers on the left, and then the berries in the autumn to make different medicines, infusions or tinctures. And it has been shown in studies in more recent times to strengthen the tissue of the heart muscle, but also to relax the blood vessels and relax the nervous system. So another really valued tree medicine, but common city plant. And a lot of folklore around it pertaining to springtime and fertility when the white flowers come out. That was just a little quick run through a few that I really love to see through the year. And this is, I'll just show a couple of images of this wild garden that we've made in Walthamstow that used to be just a bare plot with a few rose bushes, and we've done a combination of growing medicinal and edible fruit shrubs and perennial herbs, but also just letting a lot of the weeds grow wild. So it's become this kind of really joyful example of what the kind of abundance that can happen in the city with the weeds. And it's a bit of a showcase to share knowledge with people about these plants and how people have traditionally used them through the ages and how we can still use them now, but also to say, okay, it's not really going to be that great to harvest from here, being on this very busy intersection of traffic. So always coming back to the point of, okay, how do we make our city plants grow in healthier conditions? A couple more of rose and elderberry, and then just the last ones of the plantain on that little garden there, growing really big and juicy. So I'll finish there.
Thank you. I feel like there's so much knowledge there to get from everyone, and that presentation in particular, I want to just keep asking what does this one do and what does that one do. But incredible to just get a little snippet of information of different remedies. But to note, we were talking about this before, that you don't pick just from any side street or things like that. It is from spaces that feel more cleaner and sort of far away from places that could have been sprayed from pesticides, and more in the middle of parks or in the middle of marshes and things like that. So do be aware if you do want to go pick things that that there are animals and pesticides and pollution to sort of take into consideration. So we have quickly time for a couple questions. I have a few coming through. I think I'll ask you. Maybe Sophie and Leif. I don't know who wants to take it first, but what do you think is, or why do you think it's important that we notice these pavement plants? Like, what's, in a few words, why do you think we need to really pay attention to these and give these our love?
Do you want to go first? Trying to go? Okay, I go. When I think, there's when you look at it, there are so many reasons. I've obviously been giving talks about this plant as part of the project, and this is the question people ask: why should we bother? Why should we be looking at those plants? And I think there isn't, a single reason. I think it's really that they're part of our ecosystem. We live, as I said, we live in city. They're not grey. We're part of it, and those plants are an integral, part of it. They're good for biodiversity. They're good for cleaning our air. They can help, with flood as well. Having more plants means you have more flood resilience, because those plants are going to be absorbing some of the excess water. And of course, they're good because they connect us with nature. You don't even need a garden. You just need, Rasheeqa has been showing, that little corner in the street. You don't need to have a garden yourself. If our streets, were greener, and if those plants were allowed to have a space, then obviously we would be, as urban citizens, more connected with nature. So I think, they're important all around.
Thanks, Sophie. Leif, oh, you're on mute. So.
You're on mute.
I can't really add much to that. I think I think I think we've learned over the last year and a half just how important nature is, and how much we can value it when we're restricted to our own homes, and we've got to sort of pay attention to what's actually in our immediate environment. And plants and fungi as well, just nature generally, just has that wonderful ability to slow you down and just keep you in the moment. And if you're looking at a plant or a mushroom or whatever it might be, you're not focusing on all the day-to-day worries. You're looking at the gills on the mushroom, or like how interesting this little pattern of moss is, or there are so many different things, and you'll see different things every single day. So yeah, I think my only thing to add would be the benefit to our well-being of just stopping, slowing down, and noticing these things.
Thanks, beautiful answers. And even more briefly, I have another question for Rasheeqa and Ali, but yeah, we are running low on time, so fortunately, please keep your answers short. Of just, you both do a lot of engagement work, so I wanted to know sort of how has your engagement work been received, and yeah, what's that looked like a little bit? What are the projects that you work with? Ali, go for it, since you've already
okay.
So.
Well, for me, it's a very positive experience, and I wouldn't do it if it wasn't. And it kind of ties in with a little bit of what Leif was saying there, and Sophie, that all roads for me lead to well-being if you have the choice. And nature can provide that all the day long. We all know that as people who enjoy nature. And just to engage with the environment is just a fab thing. And if I can help people spot it when they might not normally, the same reason we're all here today, we're sharing stuff. I've took notes from what you guys have been saying. I've loved it because I've learned stuff. And already I know I can engage with Herb Robert in a way I wouldn't have done before. And just, there's 5 pillars to well-being, and being observant of nature. And for me, mushrooms especially covers them all. And mindfulness, massive part of it. And so when I talk about stuff and I do it in a fun way rather than hopefully not too much, I know I could sound preachy, but in a real, I can't help but want to say, look at this, it will improve your life by 34% for sure. People respond really well. And if they do it without, in a kind of, I guess, I try to be self-deprecating a little bit and not take myself too seriously. I think people appreciate that because, I think nature's really good fun, but it might not always be put across like that. So that's how it looks for me. It's a really positive experience, and people seem to engage with that, which is cool.
And Rasheeqa?
What Ali has said really, and I've been doing these herb walks for years now and bringing people around, and that thing happens where you're just shifting your gaze, aren't you? And people do report back afterwards and say, yeah, I just started to see all these different things kind of leaping out of what previously was just a blur. And I think in a way, for me, it's just sharing the feeling that I have, that in the city, it feels like you've got all these friends around when you know all these plants, isn't it? So I'm just kind of saying that to people, and it helps to ground you and connect you in the streets where you live, as all of you have said. So yeah, it is a really nice, positive response usually. I was just thinking about a time we're at this place in Barking, and in this big old bowling green, we're making medicine for the mobile apothecary. And suddenly, and there were loads of amazing daisies there and dandelions. And we'd been picking the daisies to infuse into oil because they used to be used like arnica, bruisewort it was called, to make a bruise ointment. And suddenly this council, one of these giant mowers, like appeared on the horizon coming for the daisies and started cutting huge swathes. And I was like, no, what are you doing? So I ran over and talked to him and explained that, you know, could he, you know, we want to keep these daisies. And he actually said, all right, okay, I'll leave you a big swathe of them over there. And he properly left loads of them. So it was like, oh, cool. You know, we can shift the way that we look at the world, can't we?
Yeah, it was interesting. You know, someone in a I've just answered a question very briefly. Someone said, you know, how do we address that thing, you know, when we talk to our council? And something I've really noticed, you know, councils a lot of the time, you know, they mow, they remove those plants because they get complaints if they don't. So, you know, we really need to get together, all of us, you know, and you know, tell people why we should be leaving those plants, convince them, you know, that it's not going to make their cities look dirty and unkempt and attract rats. And then, you know, if we praise the councils when they do it properly, then this may be able, you know, to tip the balance overall. And, you know, one council doing it, inspiring another, is how we are going to achieve this, I think.
Definitely agree. And actually a good moment to plug the Pesticide-Free Towns campaign that we have just launched an email basically that you can take. You don't have to particularly be a campaigner. You can just send an email to your council. It'll sort of pull it through automatically. We have actually put it in the chat, but we can put it again. Yeah, basically just asking your council, where are you at on this journey to going pesticide free, and sort of telling them we really want this to happen. And yeah, I talk to councils every other day, and it is systematically just this fear of having lots of emails coming in from people saying, you know, this isn't clean and tidy. But actually, exactly as Sophie says, if we reverse that conversation of celebrating and, you know, starting to notice and point out, I saw this rare orchid, you know, in near Burger King, or I saw this mushroom in this area, and really start pointing out to the council all this life that we can protect, you know, and safeguard. And that's really shifting the conversation. And yeah, really, I found that they are actually quite ready to celebrate that as well, and to respect what their residents want. Very briefly, if all the speakers, if you could put maybe in the chat and just say really quickly how we can stay in touch with you and follow your work. You all have really incredible social media platforms, or yeah, or just projects in general. So if you do, I know we're running a tiny bit over time, so yeah, just a space to let everyone know who came how to stay engaged with your work. You can say it out loud and put it in the chat. Both are welcome. I'll type it away.
Well, I'd encourage you all. It's come up several times from different speakers, which is lovely. Graveyards and cemeteries. Lots of us have them. Even if we're in a tight urban space, there are ancient spaces. And with that, you'll get ancient trees, amazing relationships. I did a graveyard tour. That is something that was well received. And people do these little graveyard tours, even brought an Ordnance Survey map and pinpointed it all, like something from a detective thriller, trying to piece it. And I just did the most wonderful November, going around all these cemeteries, finding amazing and truly rare things. So go do a graveyard tour and find your orchids and things. There you go. Something.
Amazing. And so yeah, you have Rasheeqa's Hedge Herbs. That's her project. And Leif's, sorry, I think I don't say your name right every time.
Oh, it's okay. It rhymes with safe, but I don't really mind. So it's fine.
I'm American. That's my excuse. And then, yeah, MoreThanWeeds, that's Sophie. And we're just going to get the Fungi Guy, also known as his details.
Yeah, Fungi Guy, the.fungi.guy on Instagram.
Amazing.
Or YouTube videos if you like silly things about mushrooms.
So yeah, do stay engaged with these projects, and do look more into the Pesticide-Free Towns campaign. It's very much a complementary campaign, so you can either just send an email or see if you can join one on the map. There's lots of different ones already going on across the UK. And it's really about, basically just writing to your council and asking them to stop spraying pesticides, and then giving them a chance to engage with these incredible projects. So it's a very collaborative one where we're always looking to work with other projects that are going on. And last but not least, this is part of a series, Reassembling Our Cities. So today was the first one on pavement plants and mushrooms, but we also have one next week on wildlife with another set of amazing speakers. And then more events on to that. So there's 4 altogether. So do have a look and sign up for those. And yeah, do follow all these incredible speakers as well. And yeah, get involved, write to your councils, plant some plants, look for mushrooms in graveyards, go to beer gardens, have a beer, look for broom rape. And yeah, walk around and just celebrate the incredible nature that's all around us. Yeah, thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank
Emma.
you.
Thank you very much.